回到2017黄金世俱杯，为我们带来风暴英雄第2场比赛的首支队伍是 Team Dignitas。经历了队员的更替，但不变的是他们登上巅峰的决心和实力。 让我们欢迎 Team Dignitas。而他们的对手则是 Ballistics， 2016年世俱杯的冠军队伍，今年依旧保存实力，迎战各路强敌，期待卫冕成功。 欢迎 Ballistics。地区间的实力对决，谁将战胜对手拿下比赛？让我们期待他们的表现。有请双方选手进入对战席。
Stopped Europe once today. Can they do it again? Up next, we've got Ballistics taking on Team Dignitas. Gillian Dread here to bring you that best of 5. But first, Dread, what do you think of Fnatic versus KSV?
It was a great match. You know, I feel like it was what I expected. Not only is it kind of mirror some of the results that we had seen at BlizzCon, but also just, you know, KSV doing what they do best, bringing the team fight and able to, you know, pretty much dominate a majority of the teams here. I give a lot of credit to the performance that I feel like we saw out of Fnatic, but in the end, KSV is KSV.
I feel like there were so many playmakers to watch in that series that was absolutely impressive. I'm talking Bad Benny.
Yeah.
The way he played versus Reset on top in Dragonshire, even in the mid, stalking in and being able to catch him as he tried to get away. Breeze was hitting a ton of Storm Bolts. Both sides, though, right? You look at the other side, too, and Team KSV also had a ton of playmakers there, so it was just a really fun series to watch.
Yeah, if I was looking for like a playmaker on the side of KSV, I feel like Tist had some, you know, really outstanding plays that weren't necessarily like, you know, the most flashy, but he was doing all the right things, specifically on his Arthas play, really being able to use his passive very effectively, or excuse me, his Frozen Waste very effectively, consistently over and over again. And then more importantly, or at least for me, in that last game, the Holy Ground plays on Dragonshire, it was just ridiculous. Winning 4 versus 5s, it was just unheard of.
Yeah, and Dragonshire, I mean, that was likely to be a problem for Fnatic. It used to be a problem map for them, and it just goes to be a good battleground for all of our Korean teams, and that's one that we're kind of looking forward to for the next match. Our next match will be Ballistics versus Team Dignitas, and what's really cool about this match is there are a lot of similarities between both of these teams, but also it's a storied rivalry at this point. Team Dignitas has defeated Ballistics the last 3 times. They have played against each other, once at BlizzCon and then twice at the Midseason Brawl.
And since the Midseason Brawl, though it is a slightly different rendition of Team Dignitas, they have been, out of the Western world, the most successful team against the Korean teams here. So it is going to be, very interesting to see how that unfolds. But on those similarities you were talking about, mainly the similarities that stand out to me has got to be the maps between these two teams. Dragonshire has been a very high priority for both of them. And then Tomb of the Spider Queen is also a map that, we know the European teams love, but Ballistics is very comfortable, taking their opponents there as well.
It actually wasn't BlizzCon, it was just this event where they had the victory. So 2 2-0s that they've beaten them in, and then the actual best of 5 to knock Ballistics out of the mid-season brawl. But either way, you know that Ballistics is looking for revenge here, especially since they have had a lot of evolution as a team just at this event here. They do have a roster change, as does Team Dignitas, although Dignitas has the 2. But bringing in Magi, there have been just so many changes, and I feel like Ballistics has really shown their quality in the evolutions that they've made. They've changed up their drafting, becoming more responsive to their opponents. They've changed up their roles, making sure that SC is back on his ranged carries, and then bringing SDE back to the secondary ranged or secondary support. And then, they had some shot calling that came about with that, where they were playing more passive versus SPT to the final form by the end of the group stage. Maybe they only get stronger from here, right? But by the end of the group stage, they look like a team that might just be rivaling KSV.
And it isn't that surprising. It's amazing to be able to see that evolution, but when we look at Korean teams, whenever they show up to a long tournament like this and have long periods of time to be able to practice against some of the best teams in the world, they always profit more than almost every other region. So it has been amazing, the transformation, in particular some of the conundrums that kind of showed early in their plays, particularly with SC and identifying what role he was supposed to be on. But I completely agree with you. It's awesome to see that at Ballistics, but also it is a regional trend that is still just reinforced here, again, at GCWC.
It's just weird that everybody gets pretty much the same amount of practice, right? And then by a single best of 2 per day, plus whatever scrims they get.
Yeah.
And for part of the time, the scrims were on a different patch to get ready for this patch, the support change patch. Somehow Ballistics seems to evolve every single match and make very clear changes. And like, you have to, I'm sure you would agree, right?
Oh, yeah.
That's just almost unheard of to see that level of change.
Yeah, at the pace at which we have seen it for them, and how big those changes have been. Because normally when we do see that kind of Korean region prowess show, they're sticking to the roles, they're sticking to the characters that we expected them to, and it's more just that practice. But this has been not just evolving as a group, it's been finding themselves and then building on top of that. And so that has been astounding to see from Ballistics. But they still have big tasks ahead of them, and that is going to be Team Dignitas.
Yes, Team Dignitas does, it kind of goes back and forth trying to decide which of the 2 European teams here at the Gold Club World Championship immediately came in with the stronger roster. Now, obviously, it's impossible for us to tell as these teams evolve throughout HGC Phase 1 in 2018 who will end up being the stronger, but it did feel like out the gates, Team Dignitas were able to bring down a team like Ballistics 2-0, but then again, right? That was a different Ballistics. That was SC playing secondary support. So I'm very excited to now see this version of Ballistics going up against this version of Team Dignitas. And Team Dignitas, they've made their evolutions too, right? We're looking at a team who literally had to find themselves, find what worked with them, learn how to play together.
Yeah, they very much did. And the one, kind of chink in the armor that I expected when looking at that newer roster of Dignitas has got to be Xaylia moving over to the support role. Even more so now that we are playing on the current patch with the support health pool being dropped that much lower. Generally speaking, when you see a person transition over to the support role, the very first thing that you see them struggling is keeping themselves alive while keeping everybody else alive. One of the two happens, but usually not both. But Xaylia has been very, very effective at making sure he avoids that. And it started a little bit with the Lucio, but it seems like later on it transitioned to that Karazim.
Yeah, that's exactly what I wanted to talk about. Like we see with Ballistics making changes, Xaylia is one of the most prominent changes on Team Dignitas. That is, he started with playing Lucio. We saw the great escape that happened for him on Cursed Hollow. And when I talked to him, he was like, he basically called it the Lucio syndrome. You feel like you run the world when you're a Lucio. And to make a great escape, you first have to make mistakes to get to that point. And in the series versus Ballistics, that was the first time that we saw Xaylia play Karzim. They had drafted Karzim before, Snitch played it, but that was the first time Xaylia did. And after that, never looked back. Xaylia never played Lucio, played a ton of Karzim, a much better win rate for him across more heroes, or more games played on that hero. That's not the only person. We also saw that with JPL, right? A lot of Tyrael play earlier on, having some difficulties with the team coordinating around Sanctifications, but then later on, his Garrosh.
The Garrosh coming in was, you know, really cool to be able to see from Dignitas, but I want to bring it back to the Karzim. Knowing that we are playing on this patch, it seems like Karzim is only going to get that much stronger. He provides a little bit of less healing, yes, but it's more so the, you know, kind of off-brand that he can provide that damage, but then he does have that cross-supporting, and that really hasn't been set back too much after this recent patch. So I expect that priority not only just for Xaylia and Team Dignitas, but for Ballistics.
Yeah, the nice thing about all of those melee supports is they didn't lose the max health, the 5% from that, or the health regen. He did lose some of the auto attack damage, but retained Iron Fists, and then Way of the 100 Fists brought back, but we've seen some other cleansing touch anyway for Karzims, and especially when you do have that solo support Karzim to make sure that you can get someone out of sticky situations for the team. Last time, the matchup, I don't believe it was a 1-1. That was a very dominant 2-0 victory for Dignitas, one that Ballistics is looking to rectify today.
Yeah, Dignitas was able to take a win on both the Dragonshire and Tomb of the Spider Queen, which again, you saw that these are the highest played maps for these teams. Both of them very much enjoyed those kind of wave clear centric. I don't even know if I feel comfortable saying that as the Dragonshire meta evolves, but I'm going to stick to it for now. Still wave clear centric maps, and I expect those to be picked up. The only other one that I can assume that we see in this series has got to be the Sky Temple, in particular when looking at Ballistics. That has been a Korean go-to for some time, especially with that kind of snowball theory that we have heard of for so very long. But they've stuck to it even beyond that. Sky Temple really is home territory for Ballistics.
Yeah, you have to think about Ballistics and being in a region where they are constantly second place, they have to start finding places where they can get victories over KSV. And so because of that, in the past we've seen them do things like bring out a Wild Braxis holdout where generally they ban it, but just trying to figure out what they can possibly do to get cheeky victories over KSV, because in straight up fights, there's just so many more battlegrounds that favor KSV. So we'll see if that Sky Temple becomes a pick for Ballistics. We're getting ready to go into the draft pretty soon.
One thing on the maps as well that I feel like we have to kind of keep into the back of our minds is, though these aren't the exact teams that, you know, maybe had the Cursed Hollow problem, it is the exact same regions. What I'm talking about is got to be Fnatic versus MVP Black has been up until that last series. Before that, the last two times that they played, Fnatic was able to win only on Cursed Hollow, and so much so it seems like a lot of the teams here have been giving the Europeans a lot more respect into that. So suddenly, does the last results between Europe versus Korea, where Korea came on top, does that change the confidence of Dignitas by taking to that, or even Ballistics maybe fearing them a little bit less?
That's weird, though, because Ballistics, in their series in League play versus KSV, that was the only map that they could take off of KSV, too. So do they feel more confident on that, or they don't feel like that is an issue for them? The map ban for Ballistics is one that you and I are very interested to see what gets chosen against Team Dignitas, because in general, Ballistics within their region, it's a lot of Braxis bans. Sometimes Warhead if Braxis is banned out by somebody else. But coming here, they have been a lot more flexible with that. We've seen some Shrines banned from them. What else have we seen?
I mean, we saw the Infernal Shrines ban come out from them. We've also seen them go with the Braxis, as you said. They banned out Cursed against Fnatic. They were willing to even go into something like Infernal Shrines and rid of that. They are willing to be fluid with whatever that is and be the most, you know, rehearsed into whatever their opponent plays the most. It generally goes, is it a StarCraft map? And if they don't show any kind of practice on that, it seems like they're going to kind of have the gentleman's agreement and say, well, instead we're going to do our research here and take away what we think is strongest for you. But does that change now, knowing that we are moving away from that best of 2 format into the best of 3? Do we see that kind of, you know, throwback in history here and make them go into the Braxis ban or maybe a Warhead ban?
Yeah, I would think that we'd see them go back to that, not thinking that anybody would want to pick Braxis except for the Chinese teams who have favored that, and North America. Roll20 has shown that they're willing to pick that too. But that's the first hurdle. What bans are there, and then what do we go to from there after that in this best of 5? Now, as we were looking at some of the players getting ready for the next draft phase, I want to go back to similarities and differences between these teams because there are more that we haven't addressed yet. And what I want to start with is Wubby and Jungha.
Okay.
Both of these players have been making a lot of plays for their respective teams. Wubby has been so outstanding for the team. He's really been caught by ganks. They've even used ganks on him just to bait things. He had this insane contagion on Dragonshire, I believe it was. Then Jungha, he's been caught a little bit more, but he had that incredible 1v1 versus Rich on Dragonshire too, and then even the Sanctification versus Roll20. The map choices are in. Ballistics bans Tomb, the Respect for the European Tomb play, and then Warhead Junction, very standard for Dig.
That is amazing to see that from Ballistics. It's so awesome to see that kind of evolution. Talking about that, are they going to go with that Warhead like we expected them to, or again, the fluidity that they have seemed to put on display at GCWC? And it seems like they're going to stick to that. They're going to stick to whatever their opponent seems to be the strongest, but we have to keep in mind that is the third best map, or one of the best maps for Ballistics, third in priority for them. But here we are. This is game number 1, Dignitas and Ballistics. Dragonshire kicking it off with an ETC ban. Not surprising. It was prominent throughout all of the first series here between KSV and Fnatic.
Both of these teams, this is their most played map, I would say, as I look down. Yeah, most played. Very, just so much practice for both the teams here. Wondering if Dignitas will ban Tassadar now. They're hovering it. Ballistics leaving that to Dignitas to ban. Ballistics hasn't really shown any interest in a Task Tracer, haven't played Tracer at all yet, but that does leave Genji up, and they'll take it very quickly.
One thing I want to bring up about Dignitas on Dragonshire is, like, I've been talking about it in the group stage a little bit. I just feel like they are, even though this is the map for both these teams, I feel like their rotations and, more importantly, their mid-game play and priority and to pressuring out that bottom lane seems to stand out far better than all the other teams at this tournament. Now, that keep it in mind, though, after that last series and how much aggression was displayed up and towards top from KSV in their last series, I'm suddenly maybe second-guessing if there's a, shift in paradigm on how to be able to approach the map, and if that would be something to overcome the playstyle maybe like Dignitas. But this is Ballistics, and they do have the Genji. They might be able to make that rotation and kind of follow what we saw out of KSV.
Well, Ballistics always has top lane focus on Dragonshire, except versus KSV. In KSV, they recognized that draft with the Illidan Abathur, there was just no way that they were going to be able to contend with that. Though, with Dahaka, Jungha did get the 1v1 and win that, and they eventually did win the game, but their top lane was heavily pressured. Things like Bruiser Camp steals, even taking down the keep there with that. And meanwhile, for Dig, a lot more normal focus that we would see, more toward the mid and bot. And Ballistics and getting Genji, getting these mobile heroes, Rhaegar and Tyrael, just are doing exactly or setting up exactly the same way that KSV were, where they had a lot who could rotate up and try to pressure out that top lane.
Seems like the clear winners of this patch have got to be the Abathur and the Tyrael. Those two have been very, very prominent. Yes, Abathur has shown up consistently throughout GCWC, but suddenly Tyrael out of nowhere. There are a lot of cross synergies with heroes that are very much still into the meta, but I'm excited to see that picked up once more for Ballistics. They can transfer that up towards the top if they want it, kind of as that placeholder, but it doesn't seem to stand out that heavily. With the Anubarak banned out, what is going to be the frontliner that we see for Team Dignitas? Immediately, I feel like we've got to be considering ourselves the Arthas.
I would agree, especially with having Tyrael Genji already. That's a pretty good setup to have Greymane. That's going to be a counter for that. Arthas has been doing really well at this event, one of the top picked warriors, and has a great win rate from that too.
But Dignitas has taken their time here. A lot longer than I feel like I would have, considering how maybe that Anubarak ban caught them off guard. They didn't think that we would see that committed here, and maybe afraid of what might be the trap of that warrior choke that they have put, and instead are going to commit to a Murden. Interesting choice to commit to more kill potential for Dignitas with that Murden lock-in. Rather than having the Arthas, I feel like Arthas' utility has been so standout, especially with the Greymane, and they don't feel like it's likely going to be picked up for Ballistics now that they've committed this far into the draft to be that melee-centric.
Jay hasn't played any Arthas yet this tournament.
Interesting. That might be something that Ballistics and a lot of teams here are looking to abuse. I did not put 2 and 2 together yet on that.
That was just popped in my head, like literally right now. I was like, I wonder, I don't really remember Jay playing him, well, a much more favored hero with Murd in there, and they will take away the Grey Mane.
But what it does do is make them kind of match the 4-man. Right now, Dignitas does have, with the Dahaka up on top, the standard top laner. Nothing really that surprising, very consistent throughout the meta. And then their 4, yes, they do have a lot of mobility and decent amount of kill potential, but Ballistics has almost no wave clear, and they committed to it so high up in the draft and so much into that offensive playstyle that I thought we would see Dignitas kind of shift gears and avoid trying to go toe-to-toe into Ballistics. And there's the Arthas. We were asking if Dignitas would be picked up, but instead into the hands of Ballistics. And now their composition is
fearsome,
absolutely terrifying. The synergy and pairing between the double reset slowed down by Arthas, but Arthas Tyrael is some of the best double frontliner that you could ask for. The only qualms I feel like you can have with Ballistics is how much wave clear do they have? Is it going to be enough? And at this point, we've seen so many teams throw wave clear out the window.
Anymore. It's just not a thing anymore in Dragonshire. It's all about those kill comps, and Ballistics can kill with their double reset, sanctification, got the burst heal to help out Genji, maybe Arthas if he needs it. Oh, man, what do Dignitas do here? Is it a second support?
I feel like immediately I want to say yes, but then they still have a lot of the same problems. It's going to be able to better deal with that double, you know, we see them go with the Karazim with that double reset here, but it is still scary no matter what pickup. The Karazim will be able to apply single target pressure at least onto Rhaegar, Genji, and Li Ming and not be so concerned about that Arthas slowing everybody down. But does that solve, you know, what is the problem here with the very, very dominant composition that Ballistics has? I feel like Ballistics has a lot of options with how they want to decide to make this laning situation as well. On top of this, this is very much going to have Dignitas rely on what I consider, again, that very cool and creative laning situation, or more so pressure that they apply towards the bottom lane. And if they don't make that happen here, I feel like I already like Ballistics draft enough to go, well, they've taken game 1.
Man, I just continue to be so amazed by Ballistics drafting and how adaptive they are, like how they set themselves up to still be able to adapt while making sure that they're getting objectively good things for the map even, right? Like they make sure to get Genji early. Both of these teams have 2 Genji players.
Yep.
So Genji is going to be high priority on a lot of games between these 2 teams. They get Tyrael, who combos so well with Genji to have that. Rhaegar, same thing there. He doesn't have Lightning Bond anymore, but he's still going to have that burst heal from that. And then still being able to get Arthas later on, Li Ming just to cap everything just so well. It's amazing. It just reminds me back to when they were able to get Zeratul versus SPT, or even the triple warrior to stop resets. It always feels like they end up on top of a draft.
They have, without a doubt, been the best team at abusing that last pick slot whenever they're choosing the team, choosing the map itself, using that and reserving that for what is the weakest thing on my opponent's side and capitalizing on that. I am wondering, though, how much of Ballistics' draft decision-making was based around the assumption that Arthas would not be a pickup for Team Dignitas. How much did they really kind of rely on it? And I feel like we're going to see that answered as the series unfolds, because Arthas is in the meta. He is very much a thing throughout this tournament. He is one of the most statistically successful warriors in the tournament. And so where does that change for Dig? Or is it even not even a problem here in game number 1? Do they have the proper laning situation and can maybe bring the fight better than Ballistics and maybe set them behind in those rotations? It's going to be a doozy. I'm excited for this draft for game 1.
I'm excited too. Dig getting Karazim is going to be great and making sure that he can match rotations up to the top lane, try to potentially get that early game pressure, the damage on probably Genji, who ends up heading up there to help. But it just kind of depends. I would expect Jungha's Tyrael to be up in the top lane, which a lot of times you would see the solo laner potentially be Arthas, but that's not really so much how a lot of teams have been playing him here. It's interesting to see both Arthas and Tyrael who gets put in the top lane for Ballistics.
It is interesting because it is so diverse, right? Both of those are kind of placeholders in that area rather than dominant laners. I do feel like I want to say I want to see the Tyrael transition and the Arthas be the one who's standing up on top. I feel like not only is Arthas better into the 1 versus 1, but Tyrael does help with the kill potential. But then I take him and I go, but yeah, 1 Howling Blast. Arthas is definitely going to make sure they get the kill and have that kill potential. So it's really just a little bit in favor of, you know, like 5% one way, 5% the other. And I feel like it is up to Ballistics. Personally, though, I think I do enjoy the Arthas holding its own. It's just you're going to lose a lot when it comes to that Howling Blast stacking with that level 1. And when you watch how Tis played it throughout all of the last series, there was so much focus on making sure he got value out of that talent that maybe I am very wrong. It should be the opposite, concentrating on having him into the format. But Jung Ha is on the Arthas, so then I would assume he is solo.
Yes, the solo laners never changing off of that for the Korean teams. And this is also important to note that it's Ballistics' first Li Ming. So let's get into game 1 of this best of 5 Europe versus Korea again. Team Dignitas taking on Ballistics.
In the blue is going to be your European representatives, Team Dignitas. You've got Wubby there on the Dahaka, Snitch playing the Karzim, Poik on Greymane, and we went ahead over into the red.
Over in the red, Team Ballistics, Jungha will be in the top lane of the Arthas. SD playing Ballistics' first Li Ming of the tournament, Magi on Rhaegar, SC playing Genji, and finally, Hooligan playing Tyrael.
I'm proud of you for that one.
Thank you.
Far better than
Process
myself.
of elimination. I got a little more time.
Team's going to collab here into the mid lane. If a skirmish does unfold, I feel like you can give a little bit more of threat to the earlier game for Ballistics immediately. In the long run, Team Dignitas with that double support Karzim should be able to trade up, but Arthas already found himself into the top lane. It doesn't look like Ballistics has any interest in this skirmish.
I would expect Tyrael to climb even higher and higher in priority for Ballistics, knowing how much they don't really want to play double support. They can have SDE playing a secondary support. They proved it in the last game. Ooh, see, goes in for the Swift Strike, hits a lot of people, but finds Genji in a corner. But he's safe for now. Arthas starting to rotate back down. A lot of fluid rotations, but that's something that we've noticed time and time again from Ballistics.
Snitch caught himself out a little bit too far there, but luckily he's going to go ahead and have that minion wave to get that Radiant dash out. So you're talking about the Tyrael and the rise in priority. I agree with you. I think he will rise in priority, not only for that reason, but also because double resets and just reset heroes in general. Tyrael seemed to be that kind of tier 3 response to be able to stop those things. But now, again, with the kind of cross-supporting being neglected and so many teams are relying on Dragonshire in particular for that kill potential and those reset-style heroes, I feel like, yes, it should only climb, not only for Ballistics, but I feel like a lot of the teams at GCWC.
He was in every single game of the last series, and if that's not telling, I don't know what is. And it seems right. It seems good, not because I love Tyrael, which I do, but because just about every single international tournament ever, we have Tyrael rise in priority until he is in every single game like that.
It is amazing, you know, how consistently that has happened, except for this year's BlizzCon.
Exactly.
I have no idea why. I don't know what happened, but it is the only tournament, it feels like, in competitive history that he has not just had this huge spike in power.
Lovely drag from Wubby. Put some extra damage on SC.
And Dignitas is controlling this mid lane very well. By the fact that they are able to take out that double turret already is going to provide a lot of vision control into what is a lackluster wave clear composition for Ballistics. Though the wave clear has been neglected, it still has the same impact on the game itself here. So Dignitas, minor advantage, but as you said, the consistent pressure that we assume out of Ballistics. Now this is where the difference from Dignitas and every other team in this tournament is, rather than trying to match them, they nope out right onto the bottom lane. Right now, this is not going to give them much, but if Ballistics keeps taking this trade, that Dignitas will find a mid-game situation to where Ballistics has a lose-lose scenario, and it leads to either a keep, a Dragon Knight, or a fort. There is no way out of it. So I want to see, is Dignitas actually going to be able to hold that up still here against a team as formidable as Ballistics, or does somehow Ballistics, you know, have something in their back pocket to be able to stop that?
Well, even in the last series on Dragonshire, when we saw 4 members of KSV go to the top lane, we saw Fnatic want to match that, and they just kept losing out more and more in the structures until top lane was such a burden for them. It forced Dahaka to have to stay in the top lane because he just was constantly defending versus the push so that he could move that lane up and make sure that he could get vision and try to control that shrine. Otherwise, it keeps them so limited to the other shrine, and the other team can play around that. Team Dignitas really focusing on this bottom lane. They continue to have Dahaka moving back and forth, but they are even going so far as to get the neutral camp in the bottom, using the great murking control of Poik on that Greymane to try to get this push continually going. But with so many resources devoted there, that does give time for Ballistics to control both of the shrines and take down Xayah first blood.
That last auto attack getting reflected there for SC. A bit of pressure for Dignitas though. Radiant Dash goes in from Snitch, but not able to get the kill there onto Hooligan. Ballistics set themselves ahead here, not only with the kill, but using that opportunity to secure the very first Dragonite of the game. And they're going to go ahead and take out those middle turrets, try and balance out the war that is Vision over mid lane on Dragonshire.
Taking that out, but making sure that Ballistics are still soaking in every single lane. With this being such an early Dragonite, just trying to take down some towers there and clear out the mercenary camp in the bottom lane. And that's it's a nice thing for Dignitas at least, knowing that if they did lose this Dragonite, keeping the members of Ballistics at bay so they're not pushing in every single lane. Now SD rotating that Dragonite around, still focusing on towers, just trying to get that experience advantage so that they can get to heroic abilities faster.
One thing that you might notice different with compositions that don't have wave clear whenever you see these kind of early Dragonites is just how they are played out, because if you don't have enough of that wave clear, the Dragonite itself is going to be off on its own. Keeping it alive as long as possible will draw the resources from Dignitas and be able to help make up for the struggles that you had through this game. And that might be part of the reason we see that shift into kill capability or kill concentration for so many teams on Dragonshire, is because you can, if you are successful in getting those kills, that can very much translate into stopping the bleeding on the mini waves later on. Ballistics, though, they're going to go ahead and use this time right after the Dragonite to pick up the Night Camp for themselves. Dignitas going to mirror them, but instead focusing once more into the bottom lane with the Giants of their own.
Yeah, they push bottom, take out the well. Small victories here and there in the bottom lane for Team Dignitas, even though Ballistics were able to get so many towers, and that does sort of stop the bleeding. At least tries to keep it as even as they can, have it be even, considering how much has been focused in the top lane. Now, what do Ballistics do with this mercenary camp in the top lane? Do they just use it as a split, get some extra free damage on it? Do they send more of their teammates up there to try to potentially get picks on the defenders? Seeing that Dignitas gets their bruisers, they're just going to make sure to defend out these Giants.
Thought for a moment there Jungha might be out a little bit too far. SC, Wubby, not able to connect that drag with a nice jump away. Is going to make that transition up to anchor and make sure that that wasn't a collapse from Team Dignitas. And though, JPL not hitting that Stormball, I thought for a second might catch him out too far there, but I was going to say, though Team Dignitas did make the transition towards the top lane, they were unable to find themselves a kill, but that's going to set the Night Camp advantage into their favor. Ballistics now is making the rotation up, and this is where I feel like it's a little bit different than what we've seen from Dignitas in the past. Rather than making the match into that Night Camp up on the top, generally you would see them make the rotation more fast down to the bottom lane and then get more and more damage out there. So this is Dignitas now matching and respecting the rotations of Ballistics, which is, again, very different than how we've seen them play the map in earlier stages of this tournament.
And it's kept it very close, even with the Dragonite going to Ballistics first of all. Extremely close game as we hit heroic abilities for the teams. No Divine Palm for Karzim with Sound Barrier there. There's a high possibility of those things overlapping, and having Dahaka with drag, having the Stormbolt, there is a lot of isolation potential with Karzim to get that 7-sided strike damage out, especially with Arthas if he is having trouble getting back, if he doesn't have Tyrael there to give him the movement speed back.
Look at this, Dignitas though, getting the invade onto the camp. As he goes over the wall, he quickly goes right on back. Camp pressure is going to be real on bottom, but Ballistics is not going to let this happen for free. Jungha and that Arthas throws down the Howling Blast, dodged by JPL for a moment. Frozen Tempest is only hitting for a second longer. Wubby on top is going to steal the Shrine in response. But Dignitas, as you see, their pressure is at all angles of the map. Now we see Wubby come down after the Stormbolt lands. The drag is there. The cleanse is followed up, but it is too much damage, too fast. Dig, get themselves a kill.
Yeah, Ancestral Healing was hoping to save Tyrael, but the amount of damage that came out was so fast from Team Dignitas that Ballistics could not save their Tyrael, and this is 15 more seconds where Team Dignitas have the man advantage here as they rotate JPL up to take the Shrine in top. They have Dahaka guarding bottom, and they're set up to take this Dragonite. Ballistics do have some of their teammates down in the bottom lane, but Wubby posturing really aggressively, even burning the Essence, isolation, everything to see if he can hold on to this long enough for somebody to get the Dragonite, but with Genji there, no dice. Ballistics hold.
The Howling Blast was perfectly placed as well, making sure that even if Wubby wanted to try and make his way back in there, it was just not going to happen. Good zoning there from Ballistics. A bit of pressure here from Dignitas. They're just kind of feigning posturing, even though nobody made the transition down. Hooligan even anchoring and seeing that. Questionable pressure there, but the Howling Blast. Leeming Orb comes in. Gilly, that was just disgusting. So much damage there so fast, and now Dignitas on full retreat. How did that happen?
He moved in, so he hits a Howling Blast and the Frozen Tempest, starts to move into position for body block even, and is like, oh no, there's going to be way too much damage already from Li Ming. Even the Frostborn Hunger is just to burst down Lucio in the blink of an eye. Is it the 5% less max health?
That's
is that the difference?
That is exactly what it is. Li Ming has way too much damage to be able to deal with. Wubby under a bit of pressure from this rotation for Ballistics. But Dignitas here, once they find themselves set behind, you see they are still doing a great job of making sure that they never lose both of the shrines. And it feels like at all points in time, even when they're down a member, they're capitalizing on different parts of the map. And this is the second time we've seen them take a night camp rotation on bottom. I legitimately feel like they're almost the only team in this tournament that has even looked at that camp as something to be able to take and get that pressure. And that, again, another thing that makes it, I feel like, stand out here. And that would keep that in mind, that if Dignitas ends up losing this game with how they can play this map and how comfortable it is for both these teams, I feel like it's a huge setback towards the success for the rest of the series.
Well, part of what's been working so well for Team Dignitas as a nice Howling Blast, follow up with the Wave of Force, forces out an Avatar, is they also have that global. They have Dahaka to be able to push in an opposite lane to where the rest of Ballistics is, and then they use those things, those mercenary camps, to manipulate where Ballistics is. They had just gone all the way to the top and then have to come all the way back down to the bottom because of that mercenary camp, which lets Wubby push up that top lane, start taking down the towers. Team Dignitas are staying in this game, but Ballistics are responding to them. But it's important to note, right, that Ballistics started this game being the ones who were trying to dictate the rotations, and now it really does feel like Team Dignitas are the ones doing it.
And with this window, now Dignitas has two choices. If they want to pressure the Dragon Knight itself or maybe some of the camps down below. It looks like they made the decision to make it up through mid, but it was too late, as Arthas has already made his rotation up onto top. And in that situation, normally you hope that only one person makes the rotation on top, so they miss a lot of experience on those minions up into the fort. But Ballistics, cleverly so, had the Genji already in position. So Dignitas not getting as much out of that opportunity window as they maybe would have liked, but still being very proactive on the map.
And they will have the camp in the bottom lane to do the same thing again. Also kind of cool to see that a lot of times they've been splitting the Greymane into Haka a lot so that one or the other could just push wherever Ballistics goes, because Ballistics wants to stick together, right? They have this double reset comp, they have Ethereal, they want to be together, they want to force a fight, and Team Dignitas just baits enough and then jumps out like JPL would like to do here, although he's going to get taken out.
That
Root finishes him off.
Awesome play from Ballistics. The Howling Blast originally interrupted the Dwarf Toss and being able to get the 3-man body block, so JPL was just pretty much counting down the seconds for the Dwarf Toss and was unable to keep alive long enough to have that. Now Ballistics, they have that 20-second window. Genji's looking to maybe match the Haka, but there's a lot of pressure up on top, but instead Ballistics focus down below and get themselves a Greymane kill here. This is exactly what Ballistics needs to do to come back into this game. It's either make the rotation up towards top and consider those shrines, or just keep bodying down below. And how much focus we normally see them have up on top, and the fact they took this fort down below, suddenly this is a huge tempo swing beyond the experience for Ballistics.
Yeah, it's a huge window of opportunity for them to try to get the next Dragon Knight potentially, or at least get something done while they have that 16 advantage. And 16 is huge for this team. Holy Ground is a game changer for any Tyrael team. And then they have Remorseless Winter too, and then Li Ming gets a big damage spike too. SCSC is having a not great time trying to deal with the bruisers up there, but having Tyrael there at least will make sure that they can get the shrine, knowing that Team Dignitas is going to start the rotation back around. They'll get the bottom one, and Dignitas buys time almost until 16.
Hoping trying to flank there and make sure he can get himself that dragon catch out of Jungha, but not close enough. Snitch catches him himself in a bad spot. Nice use there of his level 4 talent to be able to get the dash over the wall and to keep himself alive for the 16 talent tier. So this is where we expect Dignitas to maybe get that bite back now that they do have themselves the talent tier. Isolation used. There's going to be a drag immediately after. Cleanse to make sure the Eldruins follow up, but the drag heads Moggy instead. Ballistics is going to be just fine, though. They have themselves both of these shrines, and now we see the pressure and focus on to getting this Dragon Knight.
Stellar teamwork from Ballistics to get him out of that danger. Zayeli has to burn Sound Barrier just to stay alive after that aggression from Team Ballistics. Wubby's coming in with his stock. The bottom is under contention. Dragonblade comes out. He's going for Zalia, and he'll take him out.
He will get one kill. Wubby's under a lot of focus now, and after using his E, there is not enough tools to keep himself alive. Ballistics just off of that pressure and forcing the Sound Barrier just kept up enough up onto bottom into 2 versus 1, winning themselves the 3 versus 3 into mid, and there was just nothing Team Dignitas could do when they used a major cooldown like that and they weren't clumped up to get value out of it. Ballistics capitalizing on, you know, the smallest of mistakes here for Team Dignitas, and it leads to a lot more for the size of the mistake here. Now mid 4 is going to drop, and it looks like now bottom 4 is the idea here with this Dragonite. At least the keep front wall is expected. Most likely about 25% damage onto this. Dignitas with the 16 has the opportunity to try and get the flank back, but we also have to remember that Sanctification was not used, and that is going to be very hard to push away a Ballistics. They're going to be very comfortable clumping up and taking the keep with that Sanct. If at any moment it gets hairy.
Yeah, this is Genji inside the Dragonite too, so once that drops, still has escapes. Very escapable hero, and he can be comfortable using the Dragonite, all the Dragonite's health, just to get that because of the escape. JPL dives immediately after. Dodge on the Stormbolt by Magi.
Drag
Missed.
goes on to Jungha, forces the cleanse. JPL needs to use the Avatar.
I saw Arthas and immediately just thought tist. He gets hit by the Howling Blast. Tunneling Claws, but the Holy Ground is so freaking amazing from Ballistics.
It gets them the very first kill before the isolation can even go off there from Wubby. They get an immediate second kill from Reset there for SDE. Zalia trying to be distracting onto the backline, and Point goes in. He finds himself the kill, and that is what Dignitas needed to make sure that this game does not end yet. That was very well done. Dignitas holds on with Poik, the new man on the roster, the rookie of the squad, clutching it out when they need it.
Team Dignitas staying calm under immense pressure from Ballistics here, but it's not over yet. They are not out of the woods by any means because Ballistics are just about to storm tier talents. And Dignitas not having 2 members to just the 1 takedown of Ballistics, they did hold, but Ballistics now has plenty of time to take all of the mercenary cams and keep Team Dignitas busy. Dig's coming in.
Yeah, that was a greedy back on Tyrael. That's going to allow Snitch to move up. It's not enough to zone off Wubby. He uses the isolation, the 7-sided, but Ancestral hits. He keeps himself alive, and SE distracts long enough to pull away Team Dignitas, and now they are fleeting away as 20 Talonteers almost here. This Howling Blast value.
The flank was amazing on Poik. The follow-up from SCSC, Sanctification enabling him, but SC didn't even need it, just takes down one after the other. A drag is stopping it from now, but Wubby has to Tunneling Claws away. Now just trying to buy time from Ballistics. 3 people dead so quickly for Ballistics.
3 members of Dig now down, so how do you even hold off this Dragonite phase? It feels like it is going to be an immediate pickup for Ballistics. It's 16 minutes into the game, and there will not be Sanctification to move on to the core. There is not that great of core heroes on Ballistics roster, so at this point, it's likely to go and be a middle keep.
Hey!
Unless JPL has something to say about this.
SC has to get out of there.
Li Ming and Karzim making the rotation, but post 16, Karzim can kind of hold his own into this 1v1. Not win it, but definitely not get bodied like a normal support might.
SCSC gets back on the point. JPL hitting the double Stormbolt with the Piercing Bolt after the finished trait. Now both of these shrines are taken hold. Dignitas bought some time, but was it enough time? And that's the million-dollar question.
Snitch. Oh my gosh. This swift strike out, my goodness, the reaction time there onto the Dwarf Toss Vision on JPL and then immediately noping out. If that was not off in time, that very much would have led to the kill. Talking about a kill, drag after the 7-sided, isolation goes under Jungha, but he keeps himself alive every time the isolation is used. And then Magi there with the Ancestral to save the day.
He does save the day, but this is pulling back Ballistics from going to the core with this Dragonite.
Is it?
Now Ballistics realizes the trick up Team Dignitas' sleeve. Everyone here in the fight, it's a 5v4 in favor of Team Dignitas as the Dragonite for Ballistics barrels toward the core of Team Dignitas. It's going to get to the core. Nobody is able to be taken out. Everybody stopped. Jungha stopping Wubby too. A few starting to get back to the core though.
Yeah, with the 2-man save, I'm making sure those backs didn't make it to the core. I don't think Dignitas can hold this off, but SCE's taking a lot of free damage here. Shielding on the core is going to go down. Sanctification is available, and the rest of the squad is here, so it looks like this is going to be it as Ballistics clumps up. There you go. Sanctification dropped 30% and counting. This is going to be GG. Game number 1 over to Ballistics.
Ballistics make it through Dragonshire, proving, at least in this series, that the Korean method is the way to go for them. Looking solid, looking so disciplined. The control from Ballistics, not Dillistics, so that is my favorite flub so far of this tournament for me. The control and waiting for abilities was impeccable. It felt like Ballistics were so patient, like not at all bothered by the fact that they weren't dominating Dragonshire, which I think they probably would expect to do. But the control from that, like Howling Blast stopping the Dwarf Toss, right? Or even in the mid, just waiting for certain abilities to be used, immediately capitalizing with the Wave of Force, everything else was really well done. It just felt like Ballistics just, they're not amped, they're not panicked, they're just here to play.
The biggest thing I felt like with their playstyle was that they were comfortable with, like, again, then kind of no panic as you were talking about before, but it was like poking and prodding and waiting for that moment where somebody would even slightly mess up. It was never trying to force a 5 versus 5 and let Team Dignitas make the mistake into a team fight. It was more, you know, specifically like you were talking about, the Howling Blast into the interrupt onto the Dwarf Toss on bottom. That was a major moment. And then Xaylia with the sound barrier up on mid. They were just trying to go, you know, when are you going to mess up? And when that happens, making more out of the situation. We see teams, I mean, obviously do that same thing whenever they can, but it felt like we saw Ballistics be far more focused and, more importantly, comfortable with that being on a micro level rather than the here's the team fight, 3-man wipe, let's make something happen afterwards.
Yeah, it did feel like there were, it was very close, like could go either way until the one moment where Ballistics had the 3v3 and then the 2v2 skirmishes, and just being able to win both of those skirmishes at once is where it felt like it blew everything wide open, right? You get a Dragon Knight there, you start to do the damage that they were doing. They had SD or SC in the Dragon Knight so that he could use every last bit of the Dragon Knight to take out a keep. It felt like there was no really return point after that. SC, coincidentally, getting the MVP for this game.
Yeah, no surprise there, man. I feel like a lot of that was, for me, just forcing that on Xaylia. It was kind of that breaking point, as you said, that 3 versus 3, the 2 versus 2. They weren't winning at any point onto the map. And they stopped a lot of those kind of rotations with the pressure that Dignitas applies to bottom. What I thought might be enough to overcome the kill focus onto the top lane like we've seen out of the Korean teams just wasn't enough here from Europe. And now it gets a little bit weird when we look at all the rest of the maps coming out here, knowing that we see them take them out on Dragonshire. Tomb of the Spider Queen's got to be banned out. We're going down the rabbit hole, I feel, here when the map pick and bans as things move forward in the series.
Well, Team Dig has the option of either first pick or battleground choice. The same